Hey everyone, Dr. Richard Lai here with Study Acupuncture with me. And I hope that you're doing amazing whenever you're listening to this podcast. If it's your first time here, I welcome you. My name is Richard Lai. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and I'm an acupuncturist. And I make content for busy acupuncturists and acupuncture students who are working full-time, juggling family, juggling personal life, all the while trying to do their best to just study acupuncture. Now, I do have an email list, and if you're on the email list, I send you free study guides with each theory-based episode. So if you haven't signed up for that, make sure you go to my website, www.studyacuwithme.com, and sign up today. So today's episode is on the functions of the pericardium, but before we get into that, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right, and we're back. So today we are talking about the pericardium. So first, we're going to go over what the pericardium is from an anatomical perspective, and then we're going to move on into the functions of the pericardium from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint. So first, anatomically, what is the pericardium? Anatomically, the pericardium is this membrane that wraps around your heart. It encloses your heart. And functionally, the pericardium just encloses the heart. It holds it in place. And it has other functions as well, like, for example, reducing friction, because the pericardium, it wraps the heart, so it's a barrier. And that barrier acts as a protection mechanism between the heart and all the structures that are nearby the heart, because the heart is constantly beating. So if there wasn't a pericardium, with every beat of the heart, it's going to rub against the structures that are nearby. But because there's a pericardium, it helps to reduce that friction. So therefore, it helps to reduce inflammation. Now, another function of the pericardium is that since it's a boundary, it wraps the heart, it prevents your heart from filling too much and overstretching. So those are the functions from an anatomical perspective. All right, now let's talk about the functions of the pericardium from a TCM theory perspective. So first we'll talk about it as an organ, and then we'll talk about it as a channel. So from an organ theory perspective, the function of the pericardium is really actually similar to the function of the heart, because the pericardium also governs blood. It also houses the mind. And the heart also governs blood and houses the mind. And you can see this in the point functions of the pericardium. So if you open up your Acupuncture Point app and you scroll through the functions of the pericardium, you can see a lot of them have to do with regulating the heart, calming the spirit, and some of them even specifically say invigorates blood, cools blood, stops bleeding, calms the spirit, settles the spirit. So these functions, they're very similar to the heart functions, which are to govern blood and to house the mind. So from an organ theory perspective, the pericardium has functions to wrap the heart, protect the heart, govern the blood, and house the mind. All right, now let's talk about the pericardium and its functions from a channel perspective. So from a channel perspective, the pericardium has a specific area of the body that it influences. The pericardium influences the chest, and it influences your heart, your lungs, because they're in your chest. It also influences the zong qi, the Z-O-N-G qi, which is your gathering qi. Now your gathering qi gathers or accumulates in your chest. Your gathering qi is formed between your spleen and your lungs, because your spleen is going to take essence from food and it's going to send that essence up to the lungs. And at the lungs, that essence is going to combine with air, and that's how gathering qi is formed. Now, the purpose of gathering qi is it helps the heart and the lung circulate qi and blood. So if there's like a gathering qi deficiency, then your lung and heart is going to have a deficiency in its ability to pump qi and blood through the body. So your patient would present with a weak voice, and they would also probably have cold hands because circulation would also be an issue. So overall, as a channel, the pericardium influences the specific area of the chest. Now, there's also a very specific point on the pericardium, which is pericardium 6, which is known as a command point. Now, pericardium 6 is the command point of the chest. So what's a command point? A command point is a point that has a strong influence on an area. It has command over a specific area. So in total, there's 6 command points. Now we have lung 7, which is the command point of the head and the nape of the neck. We have large intestine 4, which is the command point of the face. We have stomach 36, which is the command point for the abdomen. We have UB40, which is the command point of the back. We have pericardium 6, which we're talking about right now. And then we have DO26, which is the command point for resuscitation. So specifically for pericardium 6, it influences the chest. It's the command point of the chest. And overall, the pericardium channel influences the chest. It influences the heart. It influences the lungs. It influences the gathering qi, which is also known as the zong qi. All right, so we talked about the functions of the pericardium from an anatomical perspective. We talked about organ theory. We talked about channel theory. Now let's tie it all together by talking about the function of the pericardium and its relationship to our mind and spirit. Because we already talked about how the pericardium houses the mind. And we already talked about how some of the points on the pericardium channel specifically say calms the spirit. So there's a relationship there between the mind, spirit, and pericardium. Now, specifically, there are 3 cases where the pericardium will have an effect on our mental and emotional state. And these cases are blood deficiency, blood heat, and phlegm. So with blood deficiency can affect the pericardium because blood deficiency will also therefore affect the heart. The pericardium and the heart are closely related. They're not yin-yang pair related because pericardium and San Jiao are yin-yang pair related, but they're related in that they're close in function, and the pericardium literally wraps the heart. It protects the heart. And we know they both influence blood. And we also know that blood is the residence of the mind. And we know very specifically that with heart blood, our spirit is housed in heart blood. So if there's heart blood deficiency, our spirit, our shen, is going to lose its residence. And this can manifest as insomnia, anxiety, depression. So that's how an empty condition of blood deficiency can affect our mental, emotional state. Now the next one is blood heat. Now blood heat is a full condition, and this full condition can also affect our mental and emotional state. Blood heat can agitate. It can agitate the pericardium. It's obviously agitating the blood since blood heat quickens and heat is going to agitate that blood. And that's why it also causes these similar manifestations of anxiety, insomnia, and agitation, because that blood is affected. Blood is the residence of the mind. So with blood, you can either have an empty cause, which is the shen losing its residence because there's blood deficiency, or you can have a full cause, an excess cause of the spirit losing its residence because the blood is being heated up. That blood heat, that blood is agitated. So the mind is going to be agitated, and that's why it's going to result in those manifestations of anxiety, insomnia, agitation. All right, now lastly, the case of phlegm. Phlegm can affect the pericardium. Phlegm, we know there's substantial phlegm. We know there's non-substantial phlegm. Now, substantial phlegm is in our lungs. It's the phlegm that we spit out when we're sick. And then we have non-substantial phlegm. Now, non-substantial phlegm can obstruct. It can obstruct our channels. It can cause numbness. It can be in our skin, like lipomas. It could be in the joints. And it can also miss the mind and obstruct the heart orifices, which is what we're talking about right here. Now, with this type of accumulation of phlegm that's misting and obstructing the heart and the mind, it can cause manifestations that range from mild all the way to severe confusion, depression, anxiety. And how you know that it's phlegm that's causing these manifestations is you have to do a comprehensive evaluation. You have to look at our patient's tongue. You have to look at our patient's pulse. When you look at the tongue, you'll probably find a swollen tongue. You'll find sticky tongue coating. So swollen and sticky, those are the 2 key words that you have to find to rule in phlegm with the tongue. And then with the pulse, you have to either find a slippery pulse or a wiry pulse. Now, a slippery pulse can tell you 4 things. It can tell you if the patient has phlegm, dampness, food retention, or if they're pregnant. Now, a wiry pulse can tell you 3 things. A wiry pulse can mean the patient has liver disharmony. It can tell you maybe the patient has phlegm or the patient's in pain. So wiry pulse, 3 things. Slippery pulse, 4 things. Slippery pulse can be indicative of phlegm, dampness, food retention, or pregnancy. And then wiry pulse can be indicative of liver disharmony, phlegm, or pain. So in light of all that, pericardium can actually be a really good treatment choice for depression, because depression can actually be caused by blood deficiency, or depression can be caused by phlegm misting the mind, obstructing the heart orifices. And the pericardium has influence on the spirit. Some of the points literally have a function to calm the spirit, settle the spirit, like Pericardium 6. It regulates the heart, it calms the spirit, and it says it unbinds the chest. With Pericardium 6, we also talked about how it's the command point of the chest. What we haven't mentioned yet is that it's also the lual point of the pericardium. Lual points connect to a very specific area. And guess what Pericardium 6 specifically connects to? Pericardium 6 specifically connects to the heart. So all those physical and mental effects that we just talked about with the pericardium, with the governing of blood, calming the spirit, influencing the gathering qi, influencing the lung, that ability to pump qi, the heart, the ability to pump blood, all those pericardium influences make so much more sense with this connection between the pericardium and the heart. Alright, and that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope that you found a lot of value out of talking about the pericardium. I hope that you use the pericardium next time you have a patient who's coming to you with a chief complaint of depression. And for today, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope that you get the energy that you need to get through the workday, and the clarity, calmness, and patience that you need to show up for your personal life and your family life. Alright everyone, until next time, God bless and happy studying.